April 11th, 1962. I was an 11-year-old, awkward and overprotected child boarding a plane that would take me to Miami as part of Operation Pedro Pan, an exodus of children from Cuba to the U.S. based on rumors started by the U.S. and anti-Castro factions that Castro and his regime were planning to take the children away from their parents. Fun fact, this never happened. Still, more than 14,000 children were sent to the U.S. to an uncertain future. I was one of the lucky ones, as I had relatives in Miami who took me in, while thousands ended up all over the U.S. in group homes, foster homes, even orphanages. Between 400 and 500 of these children never, ever saw their parents again. Soon after the Cuban Missile Crisis, my dad left Cuba illegally in a rickety boat, taking an unplanned detour in Nassau for a couple of months. He was only in Miami for a few months, not being able to find a job other than picking tomatoes, which he did. Then he moved to Puerto Rico, where he had distant relatives. Before leaving Cuba, he was a land surveyor and owned 2 small businesses. Flights to and from the U.S. did not resume until 1965, the so-called freedom flights. To leave Cuba, my mom had to go to Spain first. This was around the end of '63 or early '64. In Madrid, she applied for asylum at the U.S. Embassy. While in Spain, she worked as a nanny for an American family. In Cuba, she had been a history and geography professor in a junior college level school. She was granted asylum, and in November '64, I was reunited with my parents in Puerto Rico, a place I will always love and always call home. In Puerto Rico, and again later in the U.S., my parents worked at jobs that they were way overqualified for. We lived in Puerto Rico until 1976, when we moved to Pompano Beach. Due to the efforts of my mom, 17 relatives were able to leave Cuba and come to a better life in the U.S. My grandparents, my 4 uncles, their wives, and their children. Now these children have their own children and even grandchildren. This is what we call now chain migration. My mom had to vow for each of these people before they were able to come here. So now it's the 21st century. My parents are long gone, and I'm 75 years old. In a few days, it will be 64 years since I left my native Cuba. And in a few months, it will be 50 years since I left my adopted home of Puerto Rico. Yay, Puerto Rico, love you. Just in my immediate family, there are 17 first-generation immigrants and at least 20 second and third-generation immigrants. My parents made a huge sacrifice sending me here, but I'm glad they did. Maybe it's not the life they originally wanted for me, but I think I've made it work so far. I might not look or sound like some people's idea of an immigrant, but there is no doubt that when certain people these days hear my last name, I will never be anything but an immigrant in their eyes, and that's their loss.
Let my people So, sorry, Alison, I'm going to say, hi, I'm Alison Rognas, and I used to go here. I miss you guys. This has been a lot. It's complicated, but I'll try to be coherent. In January of 2020, my husband Tony and I went to Costco and stocked up on food and medicine in case Reddit was right about an outbreak coming from China. Later that year, our child finished 5th grade at home. As soon as she finished, we registered as homeschoolers because we now knew that directing her whole education was not as terrible as directing homework. We could be certain of safety, and we could be certain of an appropriate education because a classroom of one makes accommodations simple. To their credit, Palm Beach County Schools did a much better job of handling the pandemic than we expected. The Boy Scouts of America did a disappointing job handling the pandemic. Also, the other children made ours feel bad. We quit them in 2022. My husband and I were born in South Florida and raised in Broward County. Our only child started attending this church in utero in 2008. I was raised in church communities, and I realized that I would need the support to do my best. I knew that UUs accepted witches because the Moonpath Circle Cups chapter at UUCFL used to hold an annual pagan pride day. My baby grew up here, did OWL here. This was the first place she went by Iris after she told us in 2022. It was hard to get her to come to services, but at least she felt safe here. She didn't feel safe going back to school. In 2022, Governor Ron DeSantis signed the Don't Say Gay bill. The Florida Board of Education later expanded the ban on teaching about sexual orientation or gender identity to all grades K to 12. There was an atmosphere of suspicion. Politicians talked about requiring teachers to out students to their parents. Iris didn't feel safe in our neighborhood, where neighbor kids who knew her as a boy had shared anti-gay, anti-woman, and anti-trans ideas with her. She hated going to the doctor, where she pretended to be cis because we wanted nothing on her record that could be used against her. Florida Senate Bill 254 is a law that allows the state to take temporary custody of children who may be receiving or are planning to receive gender-affirming care. Discrimination against transgender people is prohibited in Minnesota. I got that sentence from the Minnesota State Attorney General's website. We knew Minnesota was liberal and rational. They wrote a woman's right to bodily autonomy into their state constitution in 2003. We are privileged. We took our time and gathered our resources to make the best, fresh, new start that we could. We learned at PRISM that we're not the only ones who fled. Many who want to cannot. I almost didn't make this because we're so lucky and privileged, but I figure I ought to say something because I can. This is the video that we're not seeing. People who are struggling now might not have the extra spoons. I had to leave behind my mom, sisters, nibblings, friends, community, and my home. The way the difference in home values works, it's probably a one-way trip. But I am in a safe place. My child feels safe in public. I left my nieces in a state that doesn't respect their bodily autonomy and wants schools forbidden from mentioning periods. Kansas made people's driver's licenses invalid overnight. ICE has been authorized to detain those they suspect of being trans people for misleading information on their visas. But I know that my neighbors here have our backs. My cousin here says nobody cares if you're gay or trans. We care. Do you fish? Iris is in a better school, in a better culture, with more job prospects and a higher chance of being happy. We moved to a climate haven with a higher altitude, abundant fresh water, and a collaborative, supportive community. There are so many nerds here, guys. I'm almost normal. One of the things that comforts me about abandoning my people is that if any of my loved ones need to escape, We've got a place here for them to land, an inland island of decency, another part of planet Earth where everything is new to us, where Iris looks forward to her future. Come to Minnesota. It's warm. Thank you, Alison.
So my family immigrated from Belgium to Canada. And I'd like to describe to you why we're desperate to leave Belgium. Microphone? Okay. So I'd like to describe to you why we were desperate to leave Belgium and how we overcame the first rejection by Canada. So first, some background about the family. We're a Jewish family hiding in Belgium during the German occupation. And you see the pictures? Yes. So the picture on your right is we're hiding on a farm. I'm 3 years old. My brother is 5 years old. I don't know any of the other people there during harvest time. This was our third hiding place. And we only stayed there about 3 months until it became too dangerous. Then we were transferred. And I have to skip about 3 more years of hiding in different places and come to liberation. After liberation, we were reunited with our family, and you see a picture of the family and a new baby brother. And he's taken at a beach in Belgium. And there was a new danger that presented itself, potential Russian invasion. And if you remember at the time, there was no NATO established yet. So there was real fear of a Russian invasion. And we were at risk because we were not Belgian citizens. Because we were born in Belgium, but our citizenship in Belgium doesn't depend on where you were born. It depends on your parents' citizenship. And there was no path to citizenship. There is one now. If you reside in Belgium 5 years, you can apply for citizenship. But that was not an option to us. And if we stayed in Belgium, we might have to go back into hiding. So, of course, we were desperate to leave. Canada was advertising for immigrants, so my parents applied, and we were rejected because my brother had eczema all over his body. So we were kind of stuck in Belgium because the same thing happened with Brazil. We were rejected. So my father started a business, a very, very successful business. He imported watches from Switzerland, and within 3 years, it was so successful, I would say we were very, very well off. Under normal circumstances, I guess we would have stayed in Belgium, but those were not normal circumstances. So my father reapplied for immigration to Canada only for himself, not for the whole family. And he was accepted, spent 3 years in Canada until he got his citizenship. And when he got his citizenship, then he sponsored the whole family. And then they could not reject anyone, even someone who had eczema. And that's what brought us all to Canada. Now, interestingly enough, My brother became a dermatologist. Immigrated to the U.S. and practiced in Lansing, Michigan. And during the Vietnam War, he was drafted, shipped to Vietnam, and became the chief dermatologist there. Except he was not allowed to carry a gun because he failed basic training twice. As for myself, I worked all my life in Canada, except for a stint of 7 years in Chicago. I didn't need immigration. I didn't need a green card. All I needed was a letter, a job offer, because we had the NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement between Canada and the US. And just a letter in my passport and I could cross the border. I stayed 7 years in Chicago. I was called a resident alien. Of course, now I'm retired, 25 years already, and every fall I follow the Canada geese south to keep warm in Florida. I have a companion in Florida, and she's sitting right there. So I'm no longer a resident alien, I'm a privileged snowbird. Thank you.
My name is Marie, and I'm going to tell a story of how my mom came from Guadalajara, Mexico, to United States. Hello. I'm going to pretend I'm her. Hello, my name is Elisa Nabut, and here is my story. I often think about immigrants. I was one of the lucky ones. At that time, the process was easier, and my father had the means to help. I was 24 when I met Jose Nabut, my Cuban husband, now my ex-husband, in Guadalajara, Mexico. Before that, I had been married very young. My first husband died early in the marriage, and I was left a young widow with my older daughter, who was about 4 years old. I came from a well-to-do Mexican family, and honestly, I did not want to live in the United States. But Jose needed to complete his medical internship there. He promised we would return to Mexico, so I agreed. I went to the American Embassy for a fiancé visa. There were medical exams that were uncomfortable. I even had to undress for some of it. Eventually, I received the visa. We married in Mexico in the church and later at City Hall in Miami, so his family could participate. I applied for residency and received my green card within 3 months. Our first time living in the United States was in Gainesville, Florida, in 1977. Small apartment, little money, everything was new. I tried to adjust. I made friends wherever I could. A cashier at Winn-Dixie, an Israeli couple, and people I met around the pool. Someone invited us to a child's birthday party. The invitation said 2 to 4. In Mexico, that means you arrive sometime between 2 and 4. So I dressed very elegantly, high heels, lipstick, and dressed my daughter beautifully. When we arrived, the party was ending. They said, no, you arrive at 2 and leave at 4. Paper plates, tablecloths, shorts, marijuana. We looked completely out of place. It wasn't wrong, it was just different. When my older daughter started kindergarten, she did not speak English. I tried to explain to the bus driver in my broken English that she did not speak any English and to please look for her at the school and make sure she got on the bus. That afternoon, the bus returned without her. I was hysterical. Thank God the driver went back and brought her home safely. We later returned to Mexico for a year while Jose completed social service. During that time, I was pregnant, and my second daughter, Isis Marie, was born in Guadalajara. We went to the American embassy for her paperwork because her father was already an American citizen. My older daughter's process towards citizenship came later since she had entered the United States earlier as a small child. Then we went back to the United States again because Jose wanted to be a surgeon. That brought us to Brownsville, Brooklyn in the late 1970s. It was one of the worst neighborhoods, burned buildings, drug addicts in our building. We even had mice coming through the radiators. One of my neighbors was a pimp. I remember the flashy jewelry, diamonds, gold chains. My baby would look at the jewelry and try to touch it. The whole place felt uneasy to me. I tried to do what I saw on American television, bake a cake and introduce myself. I knocked on my neighbor's door. He opened with the chain still on. I said, "Hello, I'm your neighbor." He said, "Oh, I'm kosher," and closed the door. I did not know what kosher meant. I thought maybe it was a country. Then I knocked on another door. It was a woman from India, very sweet, married to one of the interns at the hospital. She invited me in, asked about my life, and gave cookies to my girls. I told her I was a widow and had married again, and she was surprised I could marry again. Before I left, she gave me a small gift, a keychain with what looked to me like a swastika. I was shocked because my husband's hospital was an Orthodox Jewish hospital, Brookdale Hospital, and was a place where they saw terrible violence, stabbings, shootings, horrendous things. I showed it to my husband and asked him about it. He didn't know either. Later I learned that in India, it is an ancient religious symbol of good fortune, and that Hitler copied it and used it in a different way. That moment stayed with me. How easily you can misunderstand someone's culture when you are new. Those were my first impressions of American life in New York. And honestly, I never met one American-born person while I lived there. Not one. Everyone I knew was a foreigner. Later, when Jose moved to New Rochelle to specialize as a vascular surgeon, life improved. It was a safer neighborhood. I could walk outside. Our closest friends became a couple from Iran. I still have contact with them. In 1991, when my older daughter was graduating from high school, I became an American citizen so she could have more opportunities. She and I naturalized together. I did not become American because I stopped being Mexican. I became American for my daughters. Even now, I think about migrant workers who cross with much less security than I had. I had education. I had family support. I had legal documents. I was fortunate. Part of me still misses Mexico. The large family gatherings, the closeness, the rhythm of life, that feeling never leaves. So here I am, a Mexican woman, once married to a Cuban man, mother of American daughters, carrying two countries in my heart. That is my experience.
Hello. Last year, a cousin of mine on my mom's side, who I've never met, reached out to me on Facebook. I had to use Google Translate to learn that his name is Wissam, because it was written in Arabic, which I do not read. It was surreal to realize that I could not even read the name of a family member of my own family because of the distance of diaspora. He was reaching out to share a photo of my mom, Antonina, and her sister, Yolanda, taken sometime in the 1950s while they were in boarding school in Palestine. They were both born in Beit Jala, which is now located in the West Bank on the border with Israel. They spent time at the boarding school after my grandfather, Francis, passed in 1956. Before he passed, my grandfather owned a hotel in Jerusalem. That building still exists, but is now part of an Israeli settlement. Even while my grandfather's and other family members' graves sit covered in rubble on the property, a fact that I only know because Wissam's sister, Luna, another cousin I have never met, visited the site in 2022, and Wissam shared those photos with me. After my grandfather passed and my mother and her siblings aged out of boarding school, the exodus began. Both my mother and aunt worked as airline stewardesses. One day in the early 1970s, on the eve of yet another conflict in the region, my mother worked a flight to Washington, D.C. She walked off the flight and never got back on. While she did eventually gain her citizenship by enlisting in the U.S. Army, she first spent time in this country illegally. My youngest uncle, Jamie, left the area even before my mother and moved to the UK. I never got to meet him as he passed in the late 90s, but I was able to travel there in 2008 to meet my Aunt Sally, my cousins Ben and Christian, and Ben's beautiful children. My aunt met and married a doctor and moved with him to the UAE, a place of relative refuge at the time. Of all my mother's family, we had the most contact with Yolanda, her husband Juma, and their adopted son, Mohammed. And by that, the most contact, I mean that I have seen each of them in person for about 10 days total in my entire life, when they visited us on a couple of occasions in the US. My eldest uncle, Joseph, moved to New Zealand and worked in logistics. My middle uncle, Fernando, Wissam and Luna's father, moved to Australia in the 1980s to pursue a journalism career, but returned to the Middle East in 2017 and retired to Serbia. My grandmother, Marina, also joined Fernando in Australia in the 1990s. While I have no memories of meeting my grandmother, she did travel to the US and visited us when I was very young. I was never able to meet either Joseph or Fernando and have not yet had the chance to travel to meet any of their children, my cousins. This is what Exodus means to my family. It means leaving a region in conflict for opportunities and places that feel safer. It means leaving family behind, but building full and beautiful lives away from the emotional safety of their loved ones. It means distance and an unfortunate loss of connection to personal history and heritage. It means it means that some things never get talked about because they are too painful. It means reaching across those vast distances, cultural differences, and language barriers to reconnect. I guess it means I need to plan a trip to Australia to meet a few cousins.
Slavery chains for life.